Okay, our last speaker before we break for lunch is Tara-Nicholle Nelson. Tara-Nicholle has just been recently announced the new VP of Marketing at MyFitnessPal. For those of you not familiar with MyFitnessPal, it is the world's largest health and fitness community with over 50 million users. Tara has created content campaigns and strategies for companies like Trulia, Eventbrite, ModCloth, AOL, Time, and HGTV. And it is my pleasure to welcome Tara-Nicholle Nelson.
Well, this looks like a summit. I remember talking with the idea of this with Nir probably 6 months ago, so it's kind of exciting to see it manifest into a whole bunch of real smart, real-life people. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about transformational consumer trends for 2014. And I'm going to ease you into the trends with a little talk about just some context, like why do you care about this? Why should you care about this? My experience in the Valley is that we generally talk a lot about habits and a lot about how to build them, how to help people form them. And we talk a lot about the habit of using our product. But we don't talk as much about what habits outside of using our product we should be helping our users build. And we don't talk as much about how users are already thinking about themselves vis-a-vis their habits. And we don't talk that much about how users think about the companies that help them make or break habits. So that's what we're going to talk about now. And if you think about it, since nearly the dawn of time, consumers have engaged in commerce with the express intention to live healthier, wealthier, longer lives. They looked to alchemists and paid them for immortality and turning lead into gold, which turned out like not to actually work, but that's kind of a side point. And still today, 1,500 years later, the consumer marketplace is exhibiting a very high level of very loud demand for products and services that help people achieve prosperity. And I often will use the phrase prosperity as like to reference like a special blend of health and wealth. But why? Why is it that people come to the marketplace and offer to pay for something that seems to me it's something that seems a little counterintuitive that they would pay for it. It seems very personal. It seems like it's probably the result of some kind of mix of good fortunes and good luck and self-discipline and self-determination. Here's why. I personally blame it on the dopamine, okay? These images represent the brain's dopaminergic pathways. These are the reward centers that signal to the rest of the brain what's about to happen. And what's about to happen is major pleasure, intense, sometimes addiction-level pleasure. And these signals are very easily triggered by things that we always think of as bad habits, right? Like eating delicious but unhealthy foods, or spending too much money on Zappos late at night. Maybe that's just my personal thing. Or cocaine, or sex. Not that Zappos and cocaine have anything to do with each other. But these are the very reward centers that people find very, very difficult to overrule. And overruling them sometimes is actually necessary to build beneficial, healthy habits, like sticking to a budget or eating your vegetables. And I submit that people have always and will always be willing to come to the marketplace and pay for help making and breaking habits in these areas, in the areas of health and wealth for three basic reasons. The first is that health and wealth are like foundational cornerstones of what people think of as the good life in almost across cultures and across times. They may define health and prosperity differently, but everybody kind of sees those as prerequisites for living the good life. Second is that healthy and beneficial habits in these areas are very hard to make. Many people find them very hard to make. And the opposite is true. Unhealthful, indulgent habits in these areas are very hard to break. So does anyone here work in digital health or use digital health products, apps, services, wearable devices? Okay, if so, then you are aware that there is now an entire industry that's dedicated to this challenge of helping people change behavior. And it's a challenge that seems like it shouldn't be as hard as it is because everybody says they want to change it, right? Offline professionals, and I talk with a lot in my work, I talk with a lot of analog, I call them analog professionals, but people like trainers and coaches and therapists and people who have been doing this work of behavior change with the same populations for years and years and years. And they report back the same exact insight. In fact, I have a friend and colleague who goes by Coach Steve-O online. If you're into the kettlebell culture at all, you'll see him online all over the place. And he tells us a great story about how when he first started training, he was working with Marines. And they would come to him for instruction. Tell me what to do, and I will do it. And so that's what he did, and they were successful. And then he decided to start training civilians. And he told them what to do. And it didn't quite go the same way. His first client, civilian client, was a retired nun. And he told her what to do. And at some point in the first session, she said, wait, hold up, wait a minute. I know what to do. I'm paying you for help making myself do it. Right? This is what I like to call personal disruption. It's the intentional effort to change your habits or change your behavior, to start or stop doing something with a specific intention to level up your life. And I use that term particularly with reference to areas of health and personal finance. And when we talk through these things, I want you to think about health and personal finance very broadly. So health can include things like fitness and wellness and athletic pursuits, but it can also include the management of chronic diseases or the prevention of lifestyle diseases. And personal finance can include everything from real estate and mortgage to things that we more literally think of as personal finance, to even like career and entrepreneurship. And some of the sharing economy stuff. I even think that it includes like ed tech. Okay, so the willingness on consumers' part to come to the marketplace specifically for help with their personal disruption initiatives creates some pretty strong business cases for understanding and viewing and engaging your users through this lens. Now, I realized this about 8 or 9 years ago. I was a real estate broker and a real estate lawyer, and I drove people around in my car every day, and I heard them say the same things over and over again that indicated a couple things. I spotted some patterns. One was very few of them were actually that obsessed with the purchase or the sale they were about to make. They were very obsessed with the change it would create around in every area of their life, and they saw this one transaction as a way they could pull a bunch of levers in changing their lives. Two, I started to notice some patterns in their freak-out moments and their questions and concerns and decision traps and where they got stuck and where they made really poor decisions. So I started just creating some content to help manage people, and it worked in my business. And then I put it to work for HGTV and for Trulia.com, where I worked in-house for a while, and then started doing the same kind of work, engaging users, growing user bases for digital health companies using transformational marketing and content. And so in the process, I created this framework that we're going to talk about, a framework for businesses to really understand and engage users, a particular user group that over-indexes on personal disruption. Now, you probably know these people. I submit that a lot of you probably are these people. Okay, when we talk about transformational consumers, these are the people who are always doing challenges. They do spending fast. If you're familiar with the wellness food world, they do Whole30s. These are the people who have been both paleo and vegetarian at some point in their lives, which my own coach pointed out to me. I think 10 years ago we were having a little different conversation. They always have a side business or a side project in addition to their day job, right? And they're always pushing for personal growth and development. They're always trying to get new skills or master themselves and level up their lives. So I call these people transformational consumers. They're very lucrative to engage with directly. More importantly, they tend to be very early adopters of transformational technologies. So if you can see what they're doing, you can have a little bit of a lead measure on where the market will go. These are the people who are tracking. Does anyone in this room, maybe he's even here, know Sami Inkinen? Okay, so Sami's been tracking his food for probably 15 years, right? So these are the people who, Sami's the founder, he was the founder of Trulia and is just generally known as somewhat super heroic in his health and fitness endeavors. He's right now training with his wife to row a boat from San Francisco to Hawaii with no sports drinks, no sports bars, no nothing. So these people, if you paid attention to them and you were thinking about digital health 5 or 10 years ago, you'd be in good shape business-wise today. So my experience has been that the people that win with these consumers and help them make or break the habits that keep them up at night are able to drive these metrics. They drive downloads, they drive customers, they drive revenues from both sales and advertising. They drive engagement, but they also, and possibly more importantly, drive love and respect. Okay, these are the companies, I've worked with a number of companies like this over time who get thousands of emails a week that say these sort of bizarre things for tech companies, right? They say things like, your tech company saved my marriage, or changed what I thought was possible for my life, or changed my life, or even saved my life, right? That's love and that's respect. And so are there any marketers in the room? So it's funny because the books I talk about a lot and the common references that I have when I talk to marketers are very different than when I talk to like product people and entrepreneurs, which is what I'm assuming is more of this room. I talk to marketers about like, read Lean Startup, read Hooked. But the book I'll tell you about is called Love Marks. It was written by Kevin Roberts, who's the worldwide CEO of the Saatchi & Saatchi ad agency. It's about 10 years old. It's an awesome book. And the basic proposition is that companies that achieve the highest levels of love and respect with their users become love marks. And his definition of a love mark is just a brand that has loyalty beyond all reason. So I don't have a problem with any of that part. Here's the issue I have. The big metric he proposes for whether your brand's a love mark or not is protest. Like, if you take your product away from people, do they protest? That's a little, like, nebulous for me. It doesn't really work as a metric because we're not planning to take our product away from people. And if we can't measure it, I can't put a resource to it or strategy to it. So I've started to get a really good understanding for what business metrics do track for love mark status for digital companies in specific when they engage the transformational consumer. Here are some of the numbers that I use to quantify brand love now, right? DAUs and engagement, NPS and organic word of mouth, user-generated content, shares, likes, loves, return visits, time on site, time in app, upsells. If these numbers are the numbers that are important to you, then it's important to get inside the minds of these particular consumers and to make sure that your product roadmap, your marketing strategy, your marketing message pillars, and even your in-app content align to their personal disruption initiatives. So we're going to walk through a few of the trends. For this trend report that I'm publishing next month, everyone in this room will be invited to get the full report at no cost. In that, the report goes into much more detail than I will today on like the data and the cultural and psychological and anthropological underpinnings for these trends. But generally how the report works is there are a number of core categories. There are a bunch of trends that fall into each category. And the categories just give us a little insight into how we can actually apply these trends to our businesses. Okay, so the first category is aspirations and activations. Let's talk first about aspirations. This year, transformational consumers are aspiring to be perfectly flawed, but a little bit superhuman too. Okay? We live in a moment in time in which transformational consumers do believe that just about everything is actually possible. Okay, that's a little hyperbolic, but I'm a marketer. They do believe that things that did not used to be possible should be possible for their lives. They do believe that they can live beyond old limitations and that things that other generations wouldn't even have thought of should be well within their reach. They want to look better as they get older. They want to feel more healthy and perform better physically as they age, even as they're hitting years when earlier generations were like shutting it down. They want more joy, more financial prosperity, working fewer hours and stressing less. I always think about my dad when I think about this trend. My dad's 63. He has this, he's in amazing shape. If you are at his house at 4:30 in the morning on Thanksgiving, you're going to go work out with him because that's just how he operates. And he has a saying, you don't have to work out every day. You only work out on the days you eat. So if you ate today, you work out today, right? These are things that were very paradoxical to earlier generations that today's transformational consumers fully expect to be able to do. This is what I mean when I say slightly superhuman. But at the same time, this generation of consumer does not approach personal disruption from a place of like self-critique or self-loathing or self-hate. They operate from a place of extreme self-knowledge, which is what you see with the QS stuff all going mainstream. It's also why, does anyone, okay, first of all, if you work at Amazon, don't answer this question. Does anyone know what the #1 best-selling book on Amazon last year was? It was StrengthsFinder 2.0, right? Which was surprising to me. So these people are out there, they are craving information about their own flaws, their foibles, their strengths. They want to know how their brains and bodies work so they can be better managers of them. But they're coming at this experience of extreme self-knowledge with extreme self-acceptance and love. They want to know themselves, warts and all, but they think that the warts and all are great. They're part of what makes them great people. And they also appreciate that their approach to changing things in their lives will actually be much more sustainable and successful if it comes from a place of like loving themselves instead of like just trying to do this workout because they hate their thighs or whatever the motivation might have been before. So they're trying to live limitless lives, but without necessarily fixing themselves. Instead, they'll want and they will demand tools, projects, gadgets, apps, relationships with service providers that help them solve for their flaws. Okay. Now, this is more on activations. Okay, it answers the question like how will transformational consumers actually approach achieving their flawed superhumanity? So they're going to continue to go hard. These people are the people who last year were doing 12 marathons in 12 months. They were trying to experiment with running ultras and that kind of thing. This year they're still running, they're still doing CrossFit and Tough Mudders and all those things, and they're running their businesses and running their families, but they're striving less. It's a lot less grindy this year than it was last year. They're stressing less, and there's a lot of like cultural stuff under this that's in the report about like this post-recession mindset. They've tried it hard, and this year they're going to experiment with trying easy. So you're going to see a lot of the like hardcore athletes, try to take long walks all the time and talk about it proudly. They'll do the 7-minute workouts. They'll do way less distance on runs. So we've been seeing the average like run length go up a lot, and you're going to see a lot of people participating in 5Ks this year who also do run marathons. And they're taking much more playful approaches to their food regimens. So you'll see and hear people talking about being 80% paleo or part-time vegans, like that. All right, digital demands. So digitally mindful. This one's interesting to me because last year I definitely saw it. I wonder if any of you saw it. There was definitely like a little trend in the media of a backlash against digital. There was that I forgot my phone viral video that millions of people watched that was kind of like implicating a little bit our addiction to technology with creating social and interpersonal disconnect. We saw a lot of, wedding trends even in consumers with where you have to check your devices at the door. We're still seeing trends where restaurants are requiring or having like rules on the menu, like no devices on the table. So we're seeing a lot of talk about how technology and the addiction to it is sort of an ill that plagues humanity, but also a lot of talk about how technology may hold some of the cures. So this consumer group is very self-aware. And they're aware that a lot of their quit points and their failures and the places they get stuck are due to self-sabotage. And a lot of that self-sabotage is about being on autopilot. They eat on autopilot, they do things even with their bodies on autopilot. So they're specifically this year looking for devices and apps that help solve for that self-sabotage by helping them click out of food autopilot, finance spending autopilot. Autopilot with how they use technology and use their bodies, like using the screen, looking at a screen too much, sitting at the computer too much. They're really looking for apps and tools that increase their awareness and mindfulness of the things that they're doing that might be unconsciously sabotaging their goals. And they actually see it as like upside and stopping that obsession around, like you don't have to think as much about what you're eating or whether you're sitting too much or what you're doing with your body if you can set some of these apps and gadgets to help you be mindful. All right, all-snowboard. So, data for its own sake is awesome to us and not to basically anybody else in America. People are hearing data, consumers are hearing data, and they're just like, their eyes, it's kind of like when I worked in real estate and mortgage. People hear mortgage, and they kind of like curl up into a mental fetal position, and their eyes glaze over a little bit. That's a little bit how the mainstream consumer feels about the word data, but they're very interested in apps and gadgets that promise to collect their data in order to surface action items that I call power tweaks. These are little changes that they can make that actually move the needle a lot in their health or their personal finance. So why the 3,500? Do you guys know what MyFitnessPal does? At simplest, it's an app that helps people tie all their food and exercise data up in one place. So we have over 50 million users, and so it just turns out that a lot of celebrities use our app. We've never cultivated that, but we read these stories and interviews that they give about our app when everybody else reads them. So last year there was a story with Kate Hudson, and she had lost 15 pounds, and they asked her how. And she said, I used this app called MyFitnessPal, and I tracked my food, and I realized that I was eating 3,500 calories a day in almonds. Not even like 3,500 calories a day, period, but just like almonds. So I stopped eating so many almonds, and I lost 15 pounds. Okay, it's not really actually magic. It's a little bit about awareness. But, Mike Lee, who founded my company, talks a lot about how, A, let's not be down on data. It's very powerful. But B, the ideal world is one in which we can surface only the action items, only the insights, where we would never even have to give the user their data back to them, where instead we would just know so much about them that we could give them really useful suggestions like, hey, I see there's a kid's birthday party on your calendar, and I know you got a pizza problem, so why don't you eat a salad or something to get full that's helpful first? Those kinds of things. And that's what people are looking for. They're looking for the aha moment. They're looking less for all the metrics to come back to them. All right, so transformational consumers as a group are constantly seeking out ways to manage their own mindsets and manage their own psychology to help them level their lives up. In the last couple years, you might have heard a lot about behavioral economics reporting in the popular media around willpower and ego depletion and not trying to change more than one habit at a time. This year, what we're hearing and seeing already in consumer content consumption trends is a voracious appetite for material around what I call brain set management instead of mindset management. Okay, self-directed neuroplasticity. Now, when I was in school, they used to tell us all the time that your brain stopped growing when you were 2 years old. Did you guys? I used to hear that all the time. So that's wrong. Is the upshot. There's something they call the new brain science, although it's not actually that new, it's just new to most of us, that people are reading voraciously that posits this phrase, which I predict you will hear a whole lot, neurons that fire together wire together, even in adults. Okay, so that our brains continue to grow cells and to grow connections our whole lives, and this explains a lot about our emotions and behaviors and patterns and habits. And it also empowers us to manage and be very intentional about creating our emotions and behaviors and patterns and habits throughout our lives. So if you have a state or feeling that you want to create, you can actually cause those neurons to fire together intentionally, and they will wire together. This is why it's called self-directed neuroplasticity. So some of the media themes and memes that you're going to hear that your consumers or target users are also hearing this year are that one, that the brain has an evolved negativity bias. If you haven't been hearing that in the media already, I predict that you will. So that we need to intentionally be creating a ratio of at least 5 to 1 positive feedback to negative feedback, good experiences to bad experiences. Okay, that's one thing. Second, another message that you're going to see a lot in the media, and so are your users, is that we need to intentionally and mindfully focus on the positive things that happen, sit with them for 10, 20, actually I think 12 seconds is a number I'm hearing a lot, 10 to 20 seconds. It's a practice called taking in the good. You'll hear that phrase and see that phrase a lot in order to wire ourselves to be a little happier. And that mindfulness and meditation to manage our brains can actually impact our behaviors in our lives. If you are interested in understanding what consumers are going to see in this content vein, this year there's a book called Hardwiring Happiness out by a guy named Rick Hansen. That's the best consumer style content primer on all this material. And here we are. So buying behavior, things that are going to impact their spending choices. These are quick. Add is greater than subtract. So remember we talked about people trying easy this year. So transformational consumers are looking to simplify the rules and the things that they have to do and learn to make changes in these areas of their lives. This is part of why I think the gluten-free, wheat-free, grain-free, those diets are very popular because they're simple for people. They'll be focused on the fact that with both health and wealth, there's really only two levers you can pull, right? There's like inflow and outflow. Calories in, calories out, there's dollars in, dollars out, and restriction is hard. So people are trying easy this year. They're gonna focus on optimizing what comes in, so that they will focus on making more income versus spending less. And this will implicate all of those like freelance and collaborative platforms like Etsy, TaskRabbit, UberX. Also some of the ed tech platforms that make it very easy and lean for people to start businesses and earn more money, like Creative Live and Skillshare. They are going to be focusing this year on bringing more income in as a priority. In health, the same. They'll focus on what they are eating, a lot less on what they can't eat. So they'll add in whole foods, they'll add in produce versus like subtracting. The one exception being all the gluten-free, grain-free, wheat-free. We'll still see that be very, very popular this year. Okay, social versus social is greater than solo. I personally am aware of like a number of studies that are going to be coming out in the next few months that just show people are gravitating toward, like organically gravitating toward social workouts and social sharing around their health and fitness behavior. Primarily because it's like more fun. It's kind of funny to read these studies that are super elaborate, and the upshot is it's like fun. So people do it because it's fun, and then because it's fun, they keep doing it, and that means that they're more successful when they do it. So they tend to do more, people are gravitating toward doing more partner workouts and group workouts. And more over less, this is just, it's simple, but the products and apps that are gonna win this year with users will really have to push the envelope in UX in a few ways. They want more images, they want more takeaways, they want more real life change and benefits, and they want less copy, they want less friction. So in the report, I call it a bunch of food trends. I do some video case studies. We actually just shot one down at Earthbound Farms in Carmel that was amazing. Earthbound Farms is that brand that no one's ever heard of that everyone has in the refrigerator. They have 65% market share in organics in North America. I would love, I actually had a different slide there, with my email address on it, which is it's Tara@MyFitnessPal.com. I actually have this belief that the people in this room have near limitless ability to benefit humanity. And so if you are interested in doing that and have any questions or anything for me, I'm happy to connect with you there.